I'd say it's justified to say it's a long trip. Twice 23 kg plus 10 kg. I don't know exactly, but nearly half around the world. And I was wondering if I should continue to say these are part of Berlin diaries. Arrived now in a new position. And although I had been here, well, not at this university, but in this city, it's a little bit strange after having tried, or after settling in Berlin, the capital of what would be called my mother country or my fatherland or whatever. What does it mean if you're talking about or with an orphan? And what does it mean if we are thinking about foster children and the state? Is it by accident? Well, it is by accident, walking across campus and then going a little bit into the surrounding area. And people very friendly looking at me, which admittedly I think is a little bit out of place. Well, I say this because it is especially out of place when some Westerners think there's another Westerner and we have to greet each other. We wouldn't greet in Berlin, in Munich, in Rome, in Dublin, and wherever. But here it is this similarity. I'll come back to this later. But as I said, or as I asked, is it by accident that I walk back onto the campus and see, I don't know exactly what it was, if there was an official ceremony or if it's just an exercise or whatever. The state and the symbols and the flag, of course, but there is no wind. And this, in a way, it's this contradiction, ambiguity. We need the state as something that is firm, that is static, and at the same time it doesn't mean anything. If it is not dynamic, it doesn't have the dynamics as the flag in the wind. It's this permanent interaction, the permanent influence of the two sides of each other, the statism, the dynamics. I was talking in Frankfurt on a meeting on the way to here with Ulrich about it, the importance of relationality and processuality. It was since a long time a really exciting, interesting debate I have had. And of course with somebody with whom I wouldn't agree, with a theologian. And there's so much there came, so many things came up in terms of not understanding of a poetic approach to things, of an understanding, develop an understanding that is going beyond what we usually have in mind, that is going beyond. And I was thinking as well, walking across here, about it, that is going beyond learning and discussing the usual pathways we have. Is it by accident? Is it part of this university that there's a labyrinth, getting lost on the way into the college, into the university? Well, of course, you don't get lost. You have your guidance. You have actually an overview. But this is what research, this is what learning should be about. Not about the learning, simple learning of what we know, of the known, but learning to explore things, to go pathways we didn't know before, we never went, and the readiness to make mistakes. It's for us, as let's say old students, also called professors or doctors or lecturers, whatsoever, and it is for the young students who just enter. The readiness to make mistakes, the readiness to learn out of these mistakes, and the readiness to enter, let's say, risky situations. Which means as well the readiness to admit that we don't know where to go, how to go further, or that we went a wrong way. And of course we cannot know everything. It's the same is true for so-called freshers, for those who start at the university, and it's the same is true for the old guys, for those who have experience, who worked in their specific field for many, many years, and who, if they are not stubbornly lost, always enter, gain new paths of experience. I say this not least because there had been or is a little bit of conflict of students feeling with their marks dealt with in an unsatisfactory way. And I can understand their disappointment, but nevertheless, the question is as well frequently being discussed, and from many different points of view of experience. The problems we have today in the educational system. It's all about a very structured way. There is no labyrinth, there is no way of exploring things, making mistakes, but it is just simply about learning what is there. Not always. I made this experience, the different experience, here in China when I had been here before, in other places, in many other places. I had been in a very privileged situation, mostly which, as far as the students have been concerned, in eine, when I was working there, experienced students who, in a way you can say, dropped out of their job and had been eager to learn something new in Hungary, in Turkey, in Russia. There are these eager students, and I'm again and again and increasingly afraid that the way we educate young people, we push them towards something, is actually endangering the knowledge, the development of knowledge, the development of interest. It doesn't allow anything new. I was talking the other day in Berlin still with a friend of mine, Yifei, about artificial intelligence, and that the computers actually can do many things much better than we can do. And I just tried to clarify my opinion on this by simply referring to, for instance, translation, computer translation, machine translation. It may be that we will be soon there, especially with the new development of quantum computers, that we will be soon there, that computers, that artificial intelligence is beating in certain areas human intelligence. It is already the case in several areas. And I said, there's one thing the computer cannot do. It cannot switch itself off. Of course, it can switch itself off. It's overheating, it's whatsoever. But it cannot take a conscious decision and say, there is a limit, we have to stop doing what we are doing. And this is something we all experience, or many of us experience at some stage. Looking back in history, one of the dangerous points had been the work on nuclear energy and the bomb, where people worked on this project with a good consciousness, and there was this process developing from inside of the mechanism, the research you have to go a step further, you have to test it. Is it possible to go a little bit further? And they lost out of sight this human aspect, going beyond the discipline, saying, no, there is no point in going further because it is very dangerous. It is a fatal thing. And this is the entire debate, I think, or it's part of the entire debate that we have to debate today when it comes to Friday for Future. Everybody is now for future. It's lectures for future. It's interesting if you look at advertisements, go through the streets, go look at the shop windows. It's kids for futures. It's whatever. It's the future. Without having a clear understanding of what the future is. I admit I don't understand quantum theory, but I try to get a little bit involved in it in terms of availing of the knowledge, and it's hugely interesting, even if it's not possible in a way, not possible to comprehend it. What actually many theoretical physicists say, it is something that goes beyond our imagination, because it is not thinking simply in contradiction, in terms of contradictions anymore, but it is going beyond this. It is encapsulating the contradiction, the two sides of the contradictions into the one situation, into the one moment, into the one aspect, into the one matter. And there we see that we cannot understand a cat that is alive and dead at the same time. We cannot go back in history, kill our grandfather, and be where we are now. And this is what it is about, and this is what I think we have to think about as well when it comes to social science, when it comes to dealing, what I will have to do now, with law. The binary code of law, especially when it comes to social law, to human rights law, to even the methodology of law. The binary code doesn't bring us anywhere in a society, in a world that is not established according to binary code. This was exactly Berlin Diaries. One of the problems that could not be overcome in real terms, that the socialist and the capitalist, the real socialism and the real capitalism, stood side by side, had been especially there in Berlin, had been encapsulated in one world. And it, in a way, you can say it could not work out in this way. You can have it in distance. You have the separate societies, which in a way you can say, as further as the distance was, as better it worked. You have the so-called German border. There was the immediate conflict in Berlin, of course, especially because it was even in one city, the capital, Berlin, and then Western Berlin. It had been Germany, the Federal Republic, and the GDR, the German Democratic Republic. There was the common border, and then you have had the distant parts, let's say the GDR and France and Belgium and whatsoever. There was still this confrontation, but it was not a direct confrontation. They could exist in a way in their own nutshells. And this is what I think is exciting as well, or it's interesting, not really exciting, when we look at issues like Brexit, like what is going on in Catalonia and Spain, that actually there is an attempt to save something of a minority against a majority. And you have the same pattern with Brexit and with Catalonia, that a minority is defending rights, and actually here as well in Hong Kong, that a minority is defending rights with means that may be justifiable. In Catalonia, the referendum. But where the conflict actually is, that these means are used to make claims that are at least, to say this, at least hugely questionable. I was reading today a kind of definition, reading about constitutional law, and there was a sentence saying, speaking not of solidarity, but of the acceptance of mutual social responsibility. Now, leaving aside the misabuse of the term or concept social responsibility, I thought it is interesting to highlight really it is about mutuality. It is not necessarily about the immediate common interest as you have in class solidarity, but it is something where you have a different commonality, where you have a different understanding of what is actually the thing, the matter we have in common. It's values, and values are something I value, and that is something that I appropriate, and that is something that is appropriate to be appropriated, and that is something that goes back to production of our daily life, production of commodities. And there we have already another level, another layer of this contradiction of commodities, but the commodities are not just the things, but they are an expression of something we value. And this something we value is always practice or praxis. Lukács, many things have been written on this, Gramsci. The need, if you want to philosophize about a cocktail. I take this from a book on Aron and Sartre, this conversation in the book The Essentialist, I think, by Blackwell. And there was this little scene of Mon camarade, nous pouvons philosopher sur tous les sujets, et aussi au cocktail. It is daily life, it is the daily life that feeds into the larger life, and this is the tension. And this is the tension, I think, I may continue even under the title Berlin Diaries, being far away from Berlin, because the tension as such as we have it is not limited to this one city. This tension we have is something where the global village gets as well a new dimension. It is not only the cat, it is ourselves being dead and alive at the same time. Whatever the outcome will be at the end, when they open the box, that is open. But at the very moment, we have to live not with these contradictions, but we have to live the contradictions.